Okay, we are here meeting with our group today for Family 460. I am Carrie Hunt.
I'm Karen Waite.
And I'm Kelly Martin.
And there's a phone ringing.
My
All
phone's.
right.
I'll just ignore that.
Okay. Today we are talking about the Sacred Duty book that we read. Am I correct?
Yep.
This is the Sacred Duty discussion board reflections questions. Oh, my phone's ringing now. Sheesh. All right. So, did you all read the book and enjoy it and stuff?
Yeah, I really liked it. Yeah.
I thought it was kind of crazy as I look back on it that it was real life because it almost read like a political thriller or fiction or something like
I
that.
know. Isn't it
Yeah.
true?
It,
Yeah,
it,
my husband read it yesterday because I was like, "This is a really good book. You might want to read it." So he read it. So he
Yeah,
liked it.
it was
Um,
good.
so having completed the book, how has your understanding and perception increased on the process of international policy and law? Does anyone want to comment on how has your thoughts changed on that process?
I think
um,
it's scary how what's the word? Unorganized it is and how easily affected it is by large groups and stuff. I know that was a little bit scary.
Yeah, I think my eyes were definitely opened as far as, and some of the other things that we've watched this semester already have kind of made that clear to me that it's not exactly how I thought it was. I mean, I understood that we had a UN representative, but I guess I felt like maybe it represented more of like the general constituents, views, the people who are they sort of representing views, but I'm realizing that it's like the president, maybe his agenda can influence it, and then of course just a lot of misunderstanding. Whoever's the cleverest can really kind of, and how they do the language can really kind of push things forward that people don't really know are being pushed forward.
yeah, that's one thing that I wrote down is that you have to have precise language about what you want to get across, and I think Richard Wilkins really, had a way with his words and how he explained things, and persuasive, and it's it seems like it's not just something you can just go and do. You have to really, like he was a lawyer, so he knew that kind of language, and, it's
Yeah.
something that you really have to
Yeah.
look for and do your research. And
And then I
What
also had further understanding just about how the trickle down effect of the UN actually works based on some of the things that he wrote in the appendix, or not the appendix, yeah, the epilogue or whatever.
mhm.
Just how it shapes domestic law and public opinion, political pressures, the international aid that comes, and then just like the cultural norms. So what happens at the UN, and we can see this, eventually will trickle down. And so it's something that I think maybe should be more public, or more people should have a greater understanding of how UN things are passed and what's happening at these meetings, because no one knows. No one, not very much is known about it, I guess.
Well, yeah, you don't really hear about it that much. I mean, and
Yeah.
I didn't know anything hardly about it, and it is a little bit like when you read about it, it's kind of confusing, like the wording and stuff. It's like, this is so confusing when I read it, but it's
Yep.
just, it seems like it'd be nice if it was easier to kind of understand, and there was somewhere you could go and find out about it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so we kind of talked a little bit, Professor Wilkins' efforts to advocate for the family. What role did you see the Lord playing in his efforts, and what lessons do you learn for your own efforts in that? So I guess I'll start. I just said, that the Lord will use us as instruments in his hands, and maybe the Lord's in the details. I mean, in that story, it was really obvious the Lord was in the smallest details, allowing things to happen. If we're willing to kind of be that instrument, and I feel like also the Lord prepares us for certain situations, and I felt like Professor Wilkins was obedient, to that call, that feeling that he felt, even though it was inconvenient and not really within his area of expertise necessarily. So he was guided by the Lord, and then the Lord provided these little miracles all along the way in order to allow him to be influential.
Yeah, I think so too. I think even like, that group of women that were really outspoken, you know, there was other people there though that were really supportive of Richard and were like, yeah, I wish I would have, said that, or that's totally what I was thinking, but they just, didn't say it. And I think there was a lot more support behind him than he thought
Yeah.
that really
Yeah.
believed the same way.
Kelly?
And I think it was, because he kind of said from the beginning that he knew that, the Lord would put him in a place that he would be able to talk and influence. And so even when he was, trying out, he knew he would make it. And I think it was a mixture of the Lord and his faith in the Lord, that the Lord would provide a way, but also his own knowledge that he had, and that he knew that he could say things that would make a difference. And I think that's important for us to remember, that we need to know these things. So when the Lord wants to use us, that we're ready to be used to advocate for the family or whatever it may be in our lives.
I think that's key, is that personal preparation allowed himself to be ready to an instrument in the hands of the Lord had he not been educated, or, and it just shows that, if we're willing, yeah, the Lord will use us for his purposes. And I think that was like one of the greatest examples of that, is like the self-sacrificing, that he did. I mean, just like he lost 28 pounds in 2 weeks. I was just like, oh, the poor guy, poor guy.
The part where he talked about the vending machines, I was like, oh gosh.
Moldy bread out of vending machine.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, he actually sacrificed quite a bit to go over there and do that.
Yeah, and then just the money for the thousands of dollars for copies and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he like maxed out his credit cards and everything.
Oh, and eventually they sold their home, their dream home. They ended up selling their dream home because he wasn't doing the consulting anymore. He was traveling the world doing these things,
I mean, that's a huge sacrifice. He must have had, obviously he believed strongly in it, and he had the faith that his family was going to be blessed for the good that he was doing, and he was.
Did you notice any supporting roles that of others that played a part in this? And then why is it important to recognize those supporting roles that others play in these things that happen?
Well, his wife was like a huge support to him, even though, even when he was over there, he's like, I just wanted to call my wife. All he needed to do was hear her voice and, tell him that he can do it. And
I actually cried 3 or 4 times in the book, and it was always when he was talking about the strength that he gained from talking to his wife. And I thought that was a really touching part of it, because if you think about great men or great women, they can't do it alone. And the power that comes from a really strong union with a spouse can't be really overstated, I don't think. So that was beautiful.
Yeah. That there was the people, from United Families. I think her name might have been Susan.
Yeah.
yeah.
And her son.
Yeah, and they were a big support to him, helping him write things. And I think just, when she called him and told him he needed to do something, I think that showed a lot of faith, that she didn't know what to do, but he was the one person in the world that she called.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she knew he could do it. And there was also one that kind of stood out to me, was the man from Kenya, who just randomly happened to their booth and, happened to also be a member of the church. And I thought, man, he was supposed to be there, and he had the right power, I guess, to go nominate him. And
totally, yeah, I love that. Okay, and then I also thought about he did receive some support from the university. I think they paid for the flight at least, and
$6 a night.
Yeah, the $6 a night hotel. So he did receive at least their approval, and he was able to go under the not the guise of the university, but under their international organization with the name of Kennedy, which helped them because they thought it was the Harvard Center. So
That was funny.
yeah. Okay. Ponder your readings from A Sacred Duty. What are some consequences and risks of minimizing or eliminating family or religion from public policy? What I wrote on this was ultimately, I guess the biggest consequence, like the most extreme consequence, would be that when you lose your rights as a citizen, as you know, freedom of choice, you have some of your agency taken from you, I guess. So if, like for instance, if you lived under a certain regime, like if you lived in China, well then your right to have as many children as you desired would be taken from you.
Yeah.
So I think that when man oversteps their bounds, when you don't put family and religion, the freedom to worship as you choose, above government, then you begin to lose our God-given agency, and that is why God supports the Constitution, because it's that checks and balances, and so and obviously our freedom, but so putting those things in a preeminent place when you're making public policy is vital to securing true freedom, I guess. People don't see it that way, but when you take those away, that's the first thing that goes.
Yeah. And it reminded me of what we talked about a couple weeks ago with the children, you know, and how for the rights of the children, and how, you know, it's like they start off with a good idea, you know, like they mean well, but then with that whole children thing, it's like they go way too far, and there's got to be, you know, they're taking away the rights of the parents to be parents, you know, and to raise their children in the way that they want to raise them. And
Yep. Kelly?
Yeah, and well, I think when you eliminate the family, you just it's like a trickle. Okay, of like the breakdown of society. I mean, I think how many studies have been done about the effects, you know, of divorce on children and all these bad effects of breakdown of the family, and then all of a sudden to turn around and make laws that break down the family. It's kind of, I mean, there's something going on that's not working, and so I think that when you take away the family, um, you take away that, like, the nucleus of the whole community, and what's the government going to do? The government's going to teach them how to be responsible adults. The government's going to teach them to be caring and to serve others. I mean, so learn how to
Yeah,
love.
I think what you just hit on was completely key, is that no government can manage that many citizens without families. It's impossible. It's not financially possible. It's not possible. I mean, you can tax all day long, but if you don't have family government first governing the individual households and individual lives, and children no government can control people. It will be complete anarchy
Yeah.
or complete subjugation, you know? And so it's frightening when you take family out of its position in a society and you put that position on the government and different government agencies. It is scary because it's not possible.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Based on A Sacred Duty, what do you think we can do about it? Does the author implicitly or explicitly make realistic suggestions for ordinary citizens as well as those in a position of power and influence? Provide examples. So um, I saw that as far as the people in position of power influence, he stated clearly that we have to be very careful as to the language of the UN declarations and not be so naive as to believe that they won't become binding at some point. So I think that's for kind of the people who are in those positions, is to recognize the language is very important.
mm-hmm.
And then that was, he said that explicitly, but more implicitly, I'll just share like two of the ones I saw, that we should use our means, our financial means to help the cause, because he did that. That was just sort of unstated, but he did that. And then we should be willing to follow the Spirit and be an instrument in the Lord's hands when we're called to do something like that. Oh, and then we should work with like-minded groups and religions and individuals of whatever persuasion in order to use our collective strengths to defend the traditional family. Sorry, Kelly.
Oh no, yeah, I had a lot of the same thoughts you had. One of the biggest ones was it really struck me in the beginning of the book after he was asked to go to Istanbul. I mean, Istanbul's not like a vacation destination that most people want to go to, and how he just really didn't want to go, and he stayed up at night, and he couldn't settle with that feeling that he had, and that that happens so often where we're asked to do something, or I know there have been things here with going to the school board, or political things, and it's like I should go, but I really don't want to because I have this and this, and I think when we have those feelings that we need to take that time to go and and share the knowledge we have. We've learned a lot in school, through going through this program, and we'll have something to say that's important. And lots of times I think we discount ourselves before we even go, without even knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that just this example that I had on Monday where I went into the school and I met with the principal and like a counselor, and it was actually, I was really intimidated at first because I just felt like I was this lowly, student, and these people all had their degrees, and some of them had master's degrees, but they were like, tell us what you want to do to help our school, and what are your, we are willing to accommodate in any way, that we can help you, and like they just wanted to know what I had to offer. And when I told them, about teaching parenting classes or marriage classes or whatever, teaching how to get the dad more involved in the family and stuff like that. I mean, I felt, and then one of the teachers asked me, what are you really passionate about? What's something that really drives you, that you're really passionate about, that you want to get across to the families here, or whatever. And I just said, I just think it's really important to strengthen the family, and to, because when we strengthen the families and the families stay together, then that's going to trickle down to the communities and going to strengthen the community. And anyway, I was really surprised with how they totally agreed with that. I think most people, really do want to strengthen the family, and they realize that really does, make a difference, and it affects our communities and essentially our whole country, our world. And that's what, anyway, I was really, really, really surprised how.
And I think what you say is like a really important point, is that most people are good, and most people really feel that way. That's why it's so confusing why all these laws get passed.
I know.
How they get passed and how things happen, because the minority is so loud, and then and also I think, like you said, good well-meaning people think that certain thing will be a solution to the problem, and they don't realize they're really shooting themselves in the foot, like making their own problems actually worse by their new policies, because they don't really consider how it affects families, or the trickle-down effects. So I think that's good. You're very brave to do that. That gives me courage to do my, go in and go to a school or something to do mine. So
it was scary, but I felt like they had a lot of confidence in me, and that really helped. So.
I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of like, oh, I'm just a student. But I recognize that not only am I a student, but I also have lived experience. I've raising my own children, and it's been a very intense program all about everything, that would interest and benefit these people. And they are like happy to have help, especially
Are.
schools,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, is there anything else anyone would like to add or contribute? And then I'll summarize.
I don't think so, except I just really admire, somebody like Richard Wilkins,
Me too.
that he could, sacrifice his money, and I mean, it's really brave to use all, like you said, they had to sell their house and their dream house and everything.
Yeah.
That's just kind of scary, but we need people like that. The world needs people like that really has such a passion and believes in something so strongly like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really cool story.
It was amazing how hated he was, and how vocal that especially these women were about hating him. And I think that would be hard to be over there by yourself and
Yeah.
these people who were quite powerful. This women's caucus is very powerful, and have them hate you.
That would be a really bad feeling. And he talked about the darkness, the way that felt, the evil type feeling that, he could, that foreboding feeling when they were around and stuff. That was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because hatred, does, it permeates a room. You can feel it,
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
alrighty. Okay, well, in summary, we talked about the Sacred Duty book that we read, and we're able to discuss some of the things that we learned from it. Let me go back up to the questions. We all kind of say that our eyes were opened a little bit about the process of how the international laws and policies are formed, the importance of the language, the importance of being informed about the language, and the way that it trickles down to our everyday laws in our own countries. So that was one of the things that we learned the most. In addition, we all saw that the Lord played a huge role in his Brother Wilkins' efforts, and that he was in the details. He provided little means and ways and miracles that allowed him to do that. But we noticed that it was because of his preparation in his previous preparation through his studies and diligence in his career, as well as spiritual preparation, being willing to heed the call when it came. We talked about the supporting roles, his wife and the people of the United Families International, and especially the relationship of his wife, how he needed that emotional support and the strength and prayers. And we didn't talk about this, but it was powerful because he was a bishop, I think, at the time, about how his wife asked the ward to fast and pray for him, and what a strength that was.
Yes.
In addition, we discussed the importance of keeping family and religion in the top priority of public policy, and how that is a fundamental unit of society. And if governments can't govern their people without families governing each of their individual families, it just will never be effective or really possible. Not only that, but when government takes over, we lose some of our freedoms and our agency. And lastly, we talked about the things that were suggested, either outwardly or implicitly, and we talked about that we should take action when we're called. We talked about how that professionals need to be very careful about language of these things, and we talked about loving using and loving a variety of people who are like-minded in this cause. So I think that about wraps it up. I'll stop the broadcast.